years, all in Isleta. So I've been very lucky. Different campuses, but now I am at Pasadena, back with Miss Alvarez and back with Miss Skelton that I met at Marion Manor 2 years ago, right? 2 years ago?
2 years ago, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I am Martha Skelton, and I am actually returning back to Isleta, coming from another district. I'm on my 25th year of instruction. As that, I have never done blended learning, so it's been a trial as I go. So what I'll be sharing with you today is my path, I guess, as I've started from the beginning to where I'm at right now, and later on where I'm hoping to end up at. So that's where I'm at.
So we're also joined by Mr. Marquez, Mr. Jose Marquez. He is our math and science coach here at Pasadena. He is not here with us, but he is here virtually. Mm-hmm. And I know we wanted him to give you all a little background about how we've started this year, implementing this year. Okay, so Mr. Marquez.
Yes. So hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here virtually. And one of the things that I wanted to share with you is a little bit of our journey this year. One of the things that has taken us to this point is we have our principal. We were kind of fortunate enough that Miss Skelton was new to us last year. Ms. Martinez came new to us this school year, and we had new administration as well as far as our principal was concerned. But fortunately enough for us, she has allowed us to refocus and re-engage in this process of blended learning. And I think that has facilitated for us the journey we're taking this year. And to just briefly share the process as the ladies get started, the way we approached it this year is we took 1 to 2 pillars at a time. And as we met with grade levels, we were able to allow the grade levels to create some grade level commitments as they refocused into the pillars. Fortunately enough for us, this time around, as Norma would know, because Isleta Elementary and Pasadena Elementary were, I guess basically the pioneers in structuring blended learning into Isleta. And at this point, with new administration and a few teachers and changes that came in, we felt we needed to kind of re-engage and refocus in the process. And so our principal allowed us to take a pillar at a time, allow teachers to then create some commitments from the pillars, and allow them then to go as a grade level and practice those commitments, work through the structures of the pillars, and then engage in practices. Once that was established, teachers came back and reflected on those pillars collectively, and then started to share and re-engage in thinking about what are we really doing based on our commitment. And if we weren't there yet, then what steps did we need to take next so that we could move forward and continue to engage in the pillar? And so at this point in the semester, we're up to the next, let me see, pillar number 4, if I'm not mistaken, which is personalized, because the pillars changed also this year a little bit. They were a little bit different, and it also gave us that opportunity to become, again, familiar with the information and the key points in each pillar. And so that being said, it allowed everybody to re-engage, refocus, and then as Ms. Skelton came to us last year and through all this COVID stuff, and she's still in all the madness. And I say madness because we're also going through construction. She has found a way to make this work, and so she has initiated and started working through a menu, and then it has really evolved. And I think that's what you're going to see today, where she started, how this evolved, and the process that she's taken to get to where she's at. And I want to commend her for not only being here to share this with you, but through being a risk taker, because that's what it takes. It takes being a risk taker and just trying new things, trying and see what works best, and that's one of the things that Ms. Skelton is going to share with you guys today. Okay, so thank you again for joining us, and I'll let the ladies go ahead and share their information.
Okay, when I mentioned before that I've been at this for 32 years, I did not mean that I've been doing blended learning for 32 years. I have not. I started this journey here at Paso Del. So this is I have months, summer and of researching and just trying things out. So that is what I'm going to show you. I'm gonna go through a basic playlist and how we basically refocus some of our teachers with a basic playlist and how that evolved to what Ms. Skelton's going to show you. And this is amazing. So let me go ahead and start presenting. Right? Yeah.
I think.
Okay, can you see this slide?
You have to go back to the meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay. All right. So this is a basic playlist that we started with, and that with maybe inexperienced or teachers that need to revamp and just come back and refocus on blended learning. This is where we started thinking about our first pillar on relationships, and we had to set ritual and routine. So we started with a very basic playlist. So these are must-dos for the week. And our teachers, I talked to them about maybe carrying this on for a week, maybe 2, and then changing the activities. So we hadn't gone into pillar 2 yet. So this is basically pillar 1, setting ritual and routine. Okay. Can you see this one? Mrs. Sunan, can you see this one?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Yes, okay. So in this one, it evolved into a little more, we started looking at data, iStation, mainly because our problem of practice is reading. So we really looked at our iStation data, our DRAs, all of the levels and everything that went along with that. So we started forming groups and attached that to our menus. So in this menu, we started linking, I'll show you the next slide. We started linking that to the different stations. So here we have our Education Galaxy and our different stations as well. So this is team 1. Our guided reading teams, and this is how I separated them. Our first team, I link that to the next slide. So it takes them exactly to what they need to work on, that team. It's not individualized, but it is using data that we have so far. So we would work through the entire, all these stations, right? Okay, and then our capitalization rules. So if we go back to our first slide, again, we would, on team 2, again, I linked it to their set of stations as well. And if you notice that Ed Galaxy is different there, and then we have the different stations. The stations are the same, the activities would be slightly different according to what the kids needs. Okay, from here, we've evolved to Ms. Skelton's, and you'll see you're going to be amazed by that one. She's going to take you through her journey.
Okay. Are you able to see the creating menus list tab?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. So I titled it Creating Menus, and I titled it, or Choice Boards, because when I came into the district, I was at Mary Manor, and we didn't do any blended learning. When I came to Paso Del, everywhere I heard blended learning. And outside of certain classroom teachers' doors, I could see blended learning teacher. And I had no idea what was going on. I thought, am I supposed to have something like that? Or am I supposed to do something for that? I had no idea. Then when I started hearing some of my colleagues say, hey, it's part of our blended learning. We have to put it into our blended learning. It's part of our lesson plans of blended learning. Again, I had no idea what they were talking about. For me, it was like Japanese. So I started thinking, okay, this seems to be like something that I need to be more aware of. And so when I started hearing about conferences for blended learning and trainings for blended learning, I started signing up for everything I could in the district, because I thought, I'm at a school where supposedly we started and everybody knows about blended learning, but I'm the one that's not on board. So then I started going through as many trainings as I could. And so a lot of the compilation of what I put together is from those trainings, from other colleagues from blended learning conferences, blended learnings after school. So a lot of these ideas, some of you, if you've done these meetings or been into these meetings, you're going to see some that was shared from the teachers at East Elementary, at East Point Elementary, from Pebble Hills. And I just kind of put it all to work for me, for my classroom, and for my students. So it's been an error. It's been a go as I learn. So I started off, like Mr. Marcus said, I started it off last year during COVID-19. And I had to come up with creative ways of how I was going to get my students to try and do menus. So I'm going to start you off just simple, like how I started in the beginning, and where my students are what we're working on now. And then I still have a little bit more to go to get to, I guess, where I need to be. So the first thing is my first menu that I started with the math menu last year. Can you see it?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you see the whole menu or just part of it?
Just part of it.
Okay, let me see. If I do present. Okay, let me try it now. Can you see it now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. So I started with math, and the reason I started with math is because in my other district, I taught math for about 8 years. We were a departmentalized unit, so I felt more comfortable starting with math. It was my first year teaching 4th grade, so it took a lot of learning from the 4th grade TEKS and then incorporating it into a math. I called it playlist because I've been hearing it's a playlist, it's a pathway, it's a choice menu, it's a choice board, it's a must-do list, it's a may-do list. So you're gonna see different names because as I said, I'm learning as I go. So I called it the math playlist, and we started, actually this idea, I got it from some colleagues from Pebble Hills. And I just started in the beginning with my kids with just a must do, kind of what like Lourdes was talking about earlier. And so I had 5, imagine like math stations. I set up like 5 math stations. And because we were online, a lot of them, I went ahead and I had technology linked. And so my kids at home were able to participate as well as the ones that were able to come to school. And I did hyperlink them with the assignments. And I have a very particular reason that I picked certain apps. A lot of it is because not only do they have access to it, but then I can create lessons and I can create my classrooms in these apps. So then I could see what the kids were doing. So if they just told me, oh, I did my Prodigy, but I would give them assignments in Prodigy. If they said, oh, I did Splash and Learn, but I would give them assignments. So when I would go in there, I can see, no, you haven't done this assignment or you haven't done that. And I was able to keep track of whether they were doing it or not. So this is the reason I picked certain apps. Now I would change it, of course, as the need arose in the class. If I needed to do geometry or something, I would pick different apps. So I had to do a lot of research and think, okay, how's this gonna work for this week or how's this gonna work for the next week? And so I put anything from Edpuzzle videos to Imagine Math lessons to Prodigy, but I didn't let them just play Prodigy. I would go in there and create assignments for them and assign it to them. And then as we started moving on throughout the year, it became a must-do list. And if you notice, it became a may-do list. And that's where I integrated it from Pebble Hills Elementary, like some of the teachers there were doing. And so at the top, they have to do, those are graded, the kids knew. When they're finished, then on the bottom, those were like more practice ones. I didn't tell them that they were practice. I let them choose 2 or 3 sometimes. And I said, hey, it's gonna bring up your grade, it's gonna be extra credit, or you're gonna get more practice, or if you show me you got 80%, they would get a prize, things like that. I wanted them to get used to what they have to do and then their choices of how they can practice and get better. So this is how I did it. And of course, again, research of what I wanted them to work on. As we moved on, I started hearing that that it wasn't just a matter of giving them stations, but I started hearing that I needed to be more of a focus. So like when I was in my other district, when I would do stations, I would think, okay, this is an area that I see my students struggling in, so I would give them certain stations related to those areas. But then I started hearing that you're supposed to look also for each student, what each student is struggling in. And I hadn't done that before. I just took it as a whole, like what the class was struggling in. So when we took our first interim, I started thinking about how I was going to incorporate for the students to look at what they needed to work on their menus individually. So not just as a class, but individually. So what I did is I started linking up their results from Eduphoria based, of course, on ID number. And I mean, there's a lot of red, okay, but we're on COVID. And so they knew that those are the areas in red. So they would start working on some of them. And it was just a practice as you go. So it wasn't a mandatory requirement yet. I just wanted them to get used to looking at their data and what they needed to work on. So that's how it started developing. So from there, I got the idea then to try it with the reading. Are you able to see the reading playlist?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes? Okay. So then I moved over into the reading and I started incorporating the reading. Part of it is that I thought about how am I going to incorporate social studies? That's a big one as an ELAR teacher here at our school. So I created something similar, the must-do menu, and then of course the may-do menus on the bottom, but linked more towards what our kids were, what my students were working on. At the time, we happened to be reviewing text structure, and then we were doing a lot of the figurative language. So some of the may-do list was reviewing some of the figurative language. And again, here, I had all my students test in English and math. So their TEKS that they saw was just in English. This time, I had students testing in Spanish and in English for reading. So I put up each of their menus for their Spanish and for their English. And again, they followed the same format, similar. Okay. From there, I went ahead and I started this year. And I thought, okay, I need to change it up a little bit, because part of the problem with the must-dos that I started encountering is my students were putting a lot of effort into the must-dos. And then when they got into the may-dos, they were not as interested. So then I thought, okay, starting the new year, I'm going to come in with a new plan. So I decided, and if you notice, I changed the format each time, but that was just my choice. It was just, if I'm starting something new, I wanted to start new from the beginning, maybe a new format or something. But of course, when you do yours, you stick to what you're comfortable with. So what I did is I set it up similar to stations. And again, once they clicked, the kids each got one, and they were able to click and go into the activities. And so I linked in some must-do activities and may-do activities. And I linked in videos. So a lot of them are hyperlinked for the kids. They just click in there, they watch their videos. And it was a lot related to what we were doing in our shared reading. Of course, their iStation. And then from there, they had their word study. You can see it. I use a lot of the Kids AZ, and my kids love it. So then I also create assignments in the Kids AZ, and so they already know how to log in, and they go in there and then get into their Kids AZ assignments for the word study. Also, sometimes the reading assignments. From there, of course, the social studies. So I combine the social studies from Edpuzzles to the Social Studies Weekly. I don't know if you're all aware of that. I was not aware of that for half of the year that we had access to it. It was another colleague that told me about it, and I loved it. That has saved my life on more than one occasion, the Social Studies Weekly. And then from there, I mean, it's just different combinations. You have to look at whatever is going to work for your students. I started combining some of the expository into the science for the expository units. And then, of course, they went into the last one, which was always a review. I always had a review station. So what would happen, this is just one of the ones that I created. What I started doing is maybe my higher kids would get this one. My middle kids, I would change maybe the review, or I would change maybe the reading response to literature. I wouldn't change too much, just a couple of things. I was just trying it out. Okay. So from there, I went to, let me see where I'm at. I have all these windows open. Where am I here? Okay. No, here. Okay. From there, I went to this. So what happened with the ones that I showed you earlier, my kids were not completing them because what they were doing is they were just jumping from slide to slide, and some of them were completing the activities, but then some of them said, oh, I finished them and everything, and then they would move on to the extra, the may do stuff. So I said, okay, I need to find a way to give them choice, because I wasn't giving them as much choice. So I needed to give them more choice, but then also that more responsibility that they needed to complete the must do part. So I took off must do, may do, and I gave them choices. That's when I started calling it a choice menu. And they didn't know this, but when I gave them this, the highlighted ones are actually their must do list. And the ones that are not highlighted, I told them, okay, guys, do your yellow ones first, and then after that, pick the other ones. So then, of course, these are also linked. So each kid, I did them in different colors. So I have my groups set up. My higher group is always green. My middle group is yellow. My low group is red. And my Spanish group is orange. So they already know their colors. And so I would make a menu for the green, and I would change a couple activities based on my high kids, my medium kids, my low kids, and my Spanish kids. And of course, I would link them kind of like a PowerPoint or a slide. And they already knew. So I kept some of the activities the same, so they were familiar already with what to do each time. Oops, sorry. This is one of my mediums. Now, if you notice, this idea from putting the iStation in, before I would tell them, get on your minutes for iStation, and then I always have the question of how many minutes do I have left, or how many minutes do I still have to do? And I have to find a better way for them to keep track of it. So I learned this particular one from, I think it was Miss Modest, but I can't remember what elementary school she was at. But I like that she incorporated the iStation into the actual menu. So when the kids finished their 20 minutes, then they could go on and work on another activity. And then they knew the next day they had 20 minutes, and that's how they were. I was trying to teach them to keep track of their own minutes. And this was one way that I started coming up with. So from there, right there. Hold on. Okay. And of course, I have the red for my other ones. And if you notice, they have a lot of iStation. So the reason I stopped doing this one is because my low ones were spending a lot of time on iStation and less time on the other activities that I needed them to complete. So, of course, when I ran into that problem, I said, okay, I need to change it up again. And of course, this is my personal decision. This is what I saw was working or wasn't working with my kiddos. So then I went to what I have now. This is what I'm working, or this is what my students are now working on. We've been doing this for about a month and a half. And to tell you the truth, when we first started, the kids are like, oh my God. But the thing that freaked them out was when they see a lot of reading, they panic. Once they got into the routine and the structure of it, they took off with it. And I've kept it the same. This so far is the one that has worked the best for me. Let me go ahead and close these real quick. Oops. Number 4, right? Is it 4 or 5? Okay. So what I did is, first of all, I saw in one of the trainings, you need to make sure that you have a due date. And I still do where I put a due date and then something happens, we have fire drills, photos, whatever. And then I said, okay, we're going to extend another day or 2 days. So I said, no, I've got to stick to a date. And the kids were always asking, when is this due? When is it due? So that was the number one thing, which is kind of silly, but I needed a due date. So now they know that this is due by, like this is the one that they're working on currently, and it's due by tomorrow. And you're going to see in a little bit that I did stretch it an extra week because we had a lot of things going on, and I knew that they weren't going to finish on time. So what I did is I went ahead and I looked at my data. And one of the things that I looked at is their iStation data. And by this time we had taken our checkpoints for reading. I am no longer a 4th grade teacher. Right now, I am now a 5th grade teacher, and I teach everything except for math. So my reading, I'm teaching, we are team teaching. So I have 2 classes, and for 2 classes I teach reading, writing, and social studies. And then I teach my science for my kids. So I needed to come up with a way to do it for 38 kids, and then different levels, and some Spanish, and some higher, and some lower, and some middle. So this is what I've come up with. And taking their data, what I did is I put them into groups, okay? And once I put them into groups, I went ahead and I took first I put them in groups based on their iStation. So of course you see my teams again, my green, my yellow, my red, and of course my Spanish. This is just one class. I'm just giving you an example of one class. Then what I did is I went ahead, and this idea I also got from one of the trainings of blended learning. And this was from one of the teachers that shared. And she had a slide where I thought, well, why not put the TEKS? If they're supposed to be responsible for learning the TEKS, they actually need to know what the TEKS are, how they're looking at it. So what I did is I went ahead and I took the TEKS from our checkpoint that they were tested on, and I put them on a slide, and I wrote it in regular TEK language, which was a big mistake. And I decided to go ahead and change it into kid language. And I put it in English and Spanish so they have access to both because they're bilingual. Now, the ones that have the Education Galaxy icon on it, I put those because those are the 3 that our class needed more work on. So they know that our class TEKS are the first ones we work on. After they finish working on our class TEKS, then they're going to go in and work on their individual TEKS. Okay? So this is what this part is here for. Now, I have on the side where they, I keep forgetting where this is. Hold on. I'm trying to get out of the exit screen. Bring my bottom up. Okay. I put gold stars on it because one of the things, silly or not, I also learned in one of the teachers is as they finish a TEK, they would take one of the gold stars and they would go ahead and put it when they completed the TEK. I don't know. I don't think I can slide it. Oh, it's on view only. So they would go ahead and put it on the TEK, and then they would write in their percentage. Okay. Now from there, I do share with my students their data. So we don't share it by name, of course. What I do is, those of you familiar with Eduphoria, you go in there and I have them, I go based on the standard of what they're being tested on, and then I go ahead and the little circles in the corner, I color code them. And so the kids are already aware that the green means that they have no problem, the yellow, they need a little bit of work, and the red is where they really need work. So they already know when we look at it and when we do our data talks, they have their ID numbers, they know what they're looking at, they know where they're at, they know their percentage, they already understand what approaches means and masters means, they were close or not close. And of course they have their Spanish that they're able to look at. So then from here, what they do is they already know if I'm in red, I need to go into Education Galaxy and I'm working on just that TEK. And so what they do is when they go into their menu, everything's linked. When they go into their menu, then they go into their Education Galaxy and just work on the ones that are red. And that way they have to get at least 2 or 3 stars on. I don't know. I'm starting to hate this TV thing. Can I go back? No? No. Oh, how did you do that? Did it go? Okay. See? No. Sorry, I'm fighting with the TV. This is the first time I have a touchscreen TV, and I think it's pretty cool, but
Go back to here.
Oh, okay. There you go. So here we go. So to take you back, the kids are like, well, how are we gonna work this? It's really not that complicated. It was more my work that made it complicated. When they get here, they click on their name. So let's pretend that I'm Roberto. So I'll click on Roberto, and it's already linked to his menu. This is what Roberto needs to work on, okay? And so he knows, as you can see, it's bats. We started them for October. They're finishing up tomorrow. And so the top part, what I did is I combined the must-do list with the choice menu together. Because my colleagues here, the fifth grade teachers, the ones that are teaching math, they have something similar. Their format looks very different, but I liked that they had the must-do that they have to complete, and then they gave them like a couple of choices on the bottom, which I was not doing. So I figured, okay, I need to do a must-do, but then at the same time have some kind of choice that they know once I finish this, I have a choice to do different things on the bottom, not just 3 choices that I give them, but they actually have more of a choice. And not only that, but I geared it more towards the area that I saw that they needed work on. So Roberto, for example, he needed work with the word meaning. That was one teeth that he came out low in. And so I put in activities for him on just his word meaning. And on the bottom, on the choice menu, he has some for 5.10B and then 5.9D. That is one that I front loaded it for him on poetry for the 5.9D, because everything else he did wonderful. I mean, he got greens and yellows, but I did notice that the word meaning, he had a difficult time. And each one of these is linked. So what I did is on the Education Galaxy, when he clicks on it, it'll take him to his class TEKS, and he can see, oh, okay, those are the ones I need to go. And he already knows to go into Education Galaxy and work on the class TEKS. When he goes back into his menu, these are the individual ones. These are linked. So when he clicks on the individual ones, he sees his ID number and he looks at the red ones that he needs. And Roberto, I mean, he didn't really have any. He had like 1 yellow. And he knows that that's what he needs to work on. Once they're done, I learned this from another teacher in the blended learning. She actually had like check marks or X's where they would click on it and then they would drag it and cover their square as they were completing it. So the kids were able to keep track of what they're finishing. At the top, this time I did not put iStation back in the must-do list. And the reason I didn't do that is because, as I said before, some of my lower kids were spending way too much time on just iStation. So what I did now is I split up the iStation into days. So Roberto knows, for example, that he's going to go in on Tuesday and he's going to do his first 15 minutes of iStation, and then he goes and works on his must-dos or his choice menus. On Thursday, he'll do the same thing. The other days, he can go straight into his must-dos and choice menus. Okay? And again, I included my must-dos. I have to have a social studies, which I count as my expository. This month we were working on a composition of spooky stories, which they're about to present. Some of them are starting to present tomorrow. The Education Galaxy, of course, and then I did a grammar because I have to tie in grammar in there. And then at the bottom was, of course, the choice menus. And these are all linked. Again, some of them are linked to slides in his menu, and some of them are linked into apps where they have their assignments. Okay, Ed Puzzles, Dreamscape. They like the Dreamscape, but again, I give them assignments. So I give them the assignments on Dreamscape. When they log in, they already know the questions that show up are based on the assignment that I assigned the kids, Flipgrids or whatever. And I change it each time. He's doing ReadWorks. This is one of my little Estrella. Oops, Daphne, sorry. Daphne. This is Daphne's menu. And you can see there's just a little bit of difference. She's actually got the same type of poem, but she's doing something instead of ReadWorks, she's going and completing an activity on it. So then I went ahead and created this, and then this is more of the questioning related to the poem. And so she's able to access it and then type in her information, which makes it great because when I sign it through Google Classroom, each kid has their own copy, and I can go in there, open up the Google Classroom like when you're grading assignments, and I can see what she's done and see how far she's gone along, which is what I love about the menus because I just assign it to them. So I can keep track and plus go into their apps and get their grades. And then finally, my red team. And then this is the one that took me longer, my Spanish. My Spanish, I had to completely change some of the things for her, I have 2 girls right now, pure Spanish. but everything is also adapted to what they needed help on. So they needed a little bit more help on their poetry. I don't know if it's because it's on others, I think. So we were working on this. Actually, I had them start it, but I would bring them into my small group to go over it with them. And while we were doing it at the first time, it's just the context clues on it. That's how we were doing. And then from there, when we got into poetry this week and last week, then they started moving on into the parts of the poem that they needed to do for their assignment. Okay. And let me see, last one. And again, for them, for my Spanish kiddos, I did adapt their slides as well into Spanish. Like on their spooky stories, they were able to type it onto the slides, even my English speakers, or they were able to create it, their own construction paper, books, and everything, which the majority of the kids did decide that that's what they wanted to do. So they're the ones that are all excited about that. But that's what I've been doing. So then they go into, of course, each one. This is the basic one, but I don't think I can show them the class. Can I show them the class? The classroom? No, I have to log in. Yeah, if you were to see my kids, you would see a lot of them already have their little bats, where it's already sectioned off. And the yellow ones, as you can see, iStation, they have it for 3 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then they go into their stations. And then my red ones, I put it every day, 20 minutes, and then 10 minutes on Friday. And that made it better because they were actually able to get into their menus and into their must-do lists. So they were more excited because where before they were just doing iStation all the time, now they were able to actually get into the fun activities, as they call it. Okay. Do you have any questions? I'm sorry, that was a lot.
Ms. Skelton, so how much time do they get every day for the menu?
On the menus, they're getting 40 to 45. So they have to at least work on 2 stations per day. As long as there's no interruptions or anything else going on. And then at the same time as they're working on their menus, I'm doing my small group.
Oh, that was my next question.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. So they, as you saw on I don't know if you saw on when their names are, when they're groups, it also has the days and their times that they are meeting with me. So they already know what days they meet with me, what times, and it's set in on their menu as well, that while they're waiting for me, they're working on their menus.
And how many students are in your small group?
Right now, my very small group, I have 2, and my largest small group is 6. But again, I vary them because I have 2 classes. So I have, sometimes if it's just 1 or 2, I bring them in to sit with our small group, depending on the area we're covering that day. But usually it's about 2, the 6 is my largest. Usually it's about 4 or 5, the average. Now I am going to send Ms. Osuna a editable copy of the menus, and she can maybe send you all a copy, and please feel free to change it or adapt it if you would like. Choose one that might work for you. I started very simple, but it was a trial and error, like I said. Every time I tried something, I would notice, okay, this is working, but then all of a sudden, okay, maybe this is not working. And I changed it. And I would ask the kids too. I said, okay, guys, out of the menus, which one did you like? Before I changed the format, I said, what did you like? What did you not like? And they would tell me. I said, okay. So then I take in consideration when I do the next one. And so this next one, when they saw it, you saw the writing, but now they're used to it. They know it's just the instructions and they're used to it. You can adapt it any way that you would like. Yes, Ms. Valdez?
Hi, thank you for sharing all that work you've done. I know as a lower grade teacher, and I probably have other teachers out there that are agreeing with me, this is a lot of technology for a second grader, and also for, I guess, administration when they're asking us for more hands-on, that the students are on technology way too much already. So, not that I'm not saying I was hoping to see something I could use. I mean, this stuff's amazing. And, this is more like what we were doing towards COVID when we were all on lockdown. But right now, they're trying to get them to, well, we're trying to get them to learn how to hold a pencil, get that muscle grip again. And so it's going to be very difficult in order for us to be able to do that. I don't know if there's any kind of administration out there, but this is what we're having to deal with. I mean, we're in technology world. We have a lot of technology available to us. We don't, we need students to be picking up paper and pencil and learning those mechanics. And this is difficult.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because right now, like as I said, you do see the technology. And if you looked at some of the menus, you did see that some of the kids are that on some of the activities, they do have choices. So it says they can either they have the video, and then they have their books where they do responses in their notebooks. Like I said in the scary story, I give them choices as far as, that's how I changed it this time. Where before in COVID, it was just mainly technology because I needed to see everybody. But now if I put a video, they do have the choices in their menus. Do you want to do it on a slide? Or do you want to do it on construction paper? Or do you just want to write it and create your own pictures? So that's like one of the things that they're doing. On the adjectives one is the same thing. They have a little video, or we sit together in the group and go over it. They also have one where they can use the adjectives to create a poem. They can use the adjectives into, like, they do sentences, and have some click and drags. So that's where I'm putting it in the choice menus, that they have a choice not only of what activity to do, but how they're going to complete that activity.
Right.
So my goal is for the next one to put more of the paper pencil in it on their must-dos, because I do have some, like even on the social studies one, the social studies weekly, if you're familiar with it, you print it out. So I ask the kids, do you want to do it online? You want to print it out? And if they want to print it out, I print it out to them. They're doing the thing, the crosswords and stuff, but they're doing it with the copy.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes we'll change it up. We'll say, you know what, this time we're not doing the social studies weekly. Like, I don't know if you saw one of the first menus, it was Christopher Columbus when we were studying him. I said, this time I want you to do what we call it a pro book or research. So I gave them, we got books of Christopher Columbus. They were creating how they wanted to do it. And they actually did their posters, and some did posters, some did notebooks and research. So you can adapt it how it be best. Right now, the one I showed you is just a basic one, but yes, they do have their choices of paper, pencil, or computer. I also give them the choices to work with partners or in their groups or individualized. That's another thing that has helped a lot too.
I mean, getting to that point with everything we did in COVID would have been great if we could just transition it to, kind of like what you're doing even at our grade level, because we were using a lot of technology even in second, but we're not, we're getting frowned upon with using at that much, even the menu. They want the menu, I think, more where they can get it and manipulate it and mark it.
Yeah, Mr. Marquez and I have discussed this. We talked about it this week. We have, depending on the teacher, and I know Ms. Skelton is really good at technology and everything, and the linking and all of that. But we have teachers that still struggle with that. So we give teachers choices as well. Do you want your kids to use the literacy notebook? Do you want your kids to use just the paper pencil or that basket that's over there where kids are going to go over and pick out their individual activity, right? So it doesn't have to be digitized. It can be like when I was in the classroom, we had our choice board on a pocket chart, right? So what really matters are the activities that you're giving each child, depending on your data and the levels that they need.
My ELAR team teacher, the other teacher, she does a lot of the paper, pencil, and the creative as well. So when she has one going, she'll share it with me, and when I have a technology, I'll share it. I'm trying this out if you want to try it with the kids. So we're going like that. I know that our math colleagues as well, they incorporated a lot of the paper, pencil, and the screen time as well. We're trying to balance it out because some kids, we don't want them to do all technology. We don't want them to do all paper, of course. We're trying to give them a balance. And right now in the choice menus, that's where I'm trying to incorporate it little by little. So my kids are barely getting used to it. Now, one thing maybe I didn't mention is when I started in 4th grade last year here at Paso Del, I started with my class. When they moved me to 5th grade, my class looped with me. So my kids were familiar already with the must-do list that I started with them last year. They were aware of the routine and the structure. The other class, we were in a situation where we had a permanent substitute there for the entire year. So they've been a little bit more of a struggle. So with them, when I create their menus, it's a lot more paper pencil with them because I just need to be hands-on with them to see it, where mine are able to take off more and they feel more comfortable making the choices, whether it's technology or paper pencil. That's the difference. Maybe I should explain that in the beginning too. Yeah. Any other questions?
And those are great questions, and those are very valid points. Thank you, Ms. Skelton and Ms. Martinez. We do want to balance, y'all, definitely the online with offline. Remember, they have to do a little bit of both. But in Miss Skelton, I see some amazing things, and your the way you have evolved is just beautiful to hear to me, because when we talk about students giving feedback to teachers about what works and what didn't work, that when you said that right now at the end, I was like, yes, that's the kind of feedback we need from the kids. They need to feel free to tell us, this works for me, this doesn't work for me. I like the way you did this format not so much. I like to do it on the computer. No, and you give them choices. Some will pick paper pencil, some will pick the technology. So we have to, but again, you do have to kind of force them sometimes to pick those activities that are offline, kind of force them into the online. But yes, you can do these menus on a half sheet. I've seen in the lower grades, they do a half sheet and the kids they sign or they get a little star as they complete or a signature. But Ms. Skelton, you know your resources well, and you monitor the consistent use, and you also are very strategic with not just putting them on a program. You know what you want from them out of that program, so that's awesome. And I like the way that you started. See, this is the perfect example also of starting from differentiating down to where you are now at the level of personalization. So you as a teacher have evolved, and you started at the differentiation level. And as you saw that your kids needed to be addressed more on a student level data point, you even shared that with them, and they understand it and they use it to really individualize their own path. So that is awesome. And just that you're differentiating and you're giving them choice through their path and through their products is outstanding. So thank you so very much. This is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Obviously, you've also put in a lot of time learning and growing as a professional, and so that is always very admirable to see. Thank you so very much. I love it, love it, love it, everything that you're doing. And thank you for sharing this resource. I sure will make it available on our Google site. Okay.
Thank you.
And great questions from our awesome participants. Do we have any more questions before we wrap up?
I have one. About how long does it take for you to put those menus together?
Honestly, when I first started, because like I said, I'm new to blended learning, and there was no real, for me, I mean, it's still a work in progress. So it took me, as I was working on it last year, I combined a little bit of what I did last year with a little bit of how I started the year, and I correlated and put them all together. Now I'm at a point where the format that I have is the one that I like. So when I go in and substitute the activities, it's faster. So for me, the more time it took was actually setting up the format of how I wanted it, the template that I wanted. And I had to think about not just what was easier for me to how to present it to the kids, but how were they able to be able to manipulate it as well. So then part of it also is like when we go into the activities is when we do our data talks, our kids and I conference, and then they know which their strengths are and the weaknesses are. So I try to include it in their menus, something that they're strong in, and they can tell me, no, Ms. Skelton, you know what, I'm having a hard time with the text fluency. So then I try to incorporate. So they know, and then when they come to me, they don't say, I'm going to do this one, and say, oh, I need to work on one of my parts that I'm low on, or I need to work on my vocabulary. So that's what takes a little bit more time. Once I get the activities going, I can move faster on it. But it did take me a while to set up the format. That was true. Yes, Slides Menu is one that was my friend. Slides Menu is a big one, yes, that I went to a lot, if you like. And some of the blended conferences, they also gave us like hyperlinks and stuff to different websites, templates. I pulled it from, like I said, I've never done this before. So I just started pulling from everywhere that I could and adapting it for me and my students. And I'm 5th grade. So of course you have the little ones, you've got to adapt it for your little ones, what would be best for them. Any other questions?
Well, awesome. It is an investment of time, but a great investment in our awesome scholars. And so just like the investment our awesome teachers that are here this afternoon are making in their personal growth and their professional growth. So I can't thank you enough, Miss Skelton and Miss Martinez and Mr. Marquez. Believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen out there in our audience, I asked them to do this on Tuesday, and here they are with this amazing presentation. But that just goes to show you that they didn't do this just to present, that this is an ongoing practice, a professional practice that they're implementing, and so they're quickly able to just share out with all of us. So again, Ms. Skelton, thank you so very much. This is amazing. Ms. Martinez, thank you for your also your honesty, your growth, and sharing. Where you're starting with some teachers that are just barely implementing. They had to start small, like Ms. Skelton did, but then look at where she's gotten to at this point. So very valuable information. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Marquez, thank you, ladies, so much. I
Thank you.
love this venue. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon. Bye bye.
Good job, ladies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.